live. I had to hit go live on YouTube as well. Oh, shoot. Decades ago. I don't remember exactly when I was launched into space. I don't remember exactly why, but what I do remember is that I bought a box full of the best pop culture films and shows. The first week in space was great. But it all went downhill when I went to dump my waste into space. I made a mistake and pressed the wrong button and opened the door to storage room A. My VHS box was launched into space. I went insane due to lack of entertainment and became the Contrarian. Decades later, my ship crashed onto Earth, and I finally got a chance to watch my favorite VHS tapes. When I was done, I was excited to learn that all of my favorite films have had sequels and spin-offs. Little did I know, I was about to go insane again. Contrarians log number 5. Talking about Andor with Ron Solo. This will be my first live stream with a guest. This is my friend who has known me since I've been launched before I was even launched into space. So, hi, Ron. How's it going? Thank you for joining the podcast.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we've both seen Andor, and I was very impressed. So first, I'm just gonna go through a brief history of my experience with the Star Wars franchise, and then I'll pass it over to you. So, um, I'm of the age where I was not alive when the first trilogy came out, so I was introduced to that by my parents as a really little kid. So Star Wars has just been always a memory in my life. I don't even remember the first time I saw it. And then as I grew up, saw the prequels, loved them at the time. But then when I got older, I kind of realized that they weren't the best written. Like the world building was great, but they weren't like George wasn't really good at writing dialogue, and it was the lines were kind of awkward, but it was still a really good subjective experience for me. I just loved the prequels. And then around 2012, Disney bought Star Wars, so I was really hyped for the trilogy or the new movies and everything. And um I really was excited about The Force Awakens, but then by the time The Last Jedi came out, I was kind of really concerned for the state of Star Wars because uh it just felt like with every film that came out was just worse and worse. And then when the shows came out, like there was a little bit of a new hope with The Mandalorian. But then it just progressively got worse and worse. And then I just canceled my Disney Plus subscription after the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And I didn't even watch Andor when it first came out. I watched it like a year later. And I heard through the grapevine that it was actually um, a really good show. And I think that Rogue One, the original movie that it's based off of, or one of the characters that was introduced in, the main character, that was a pretty solid film. It was kind of slow in pacing and whatnot, but it was a pretty good film compared to the other films that came out around the same time. Um, but yeah, I was just I'm really excited to talk about Andor. So that's my I was kind of like my reaction was like, "Oh my gosh, this is actually the first good Star Wars film in every way made during my lifetime." Because the was really good with the world building, in my opinion, but like my entire life, a Star Wars film never came, a Star Wars story never came out that was like really good in writing, plot, and world building, and this one just knocked it out of the park in all three areas. Um, so anyway, that's my history with the franchise. How about you, Ron?
I think I had a pretty similar experience to you. Although I do remember the first time I watched a Star Wars movie, I was 5. and it was 1999, and it was shortly after The Phantom Menace came out. That was my entry into the franchise, um, and I love The Phantom Menace. I still do. That might be an unpopular opinion, but I thought it was great. Uh, and I think I probably watched the original trilogy between The Phantom Menace coming out and then Attack of the Clones coming out. I was able to see Attack of the Clones in theaters. I think I saw The Revenge of the Sith in theaters too. Um, I remember the first DVD that I ever purchased was Attack of the Clones. I bought that at a grocery store with some birthday money. And I really loved watching the behind the scenes featurettes. Those were my favorite because I thought it was so cool the way that they did all the lightsaber choreography. And I really wanted to work in film after watching Star Wars. And I pursued that indirectly. I do work in film. I don't work in narrative film. Um, but I think like that love of movies and storytelling was like directly tied to watching the prequel trilogy. Um, and I've kind of vacillated in my opinions of it. I think, like watching it now after having watched a lot of like really good movies, I recognize that it you know, it is what it is, right? Like, I think I appreciate it more as camp now. I don't know if it's, like, self-aware to really be counted as camp, um, but it's got its own thing going on, and I respect that. Uh, I think, like, I was also curious what was gonna happen when Disney acquired Star Wars in 2012. If I'm remembering correctly, like in the beginning, it was like a bunch of sort of experiments with the franchise that were organized around the release of their sequel trilogy featuring like Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver and Oscar Isaac and all those folks. Um, so we got like The Force Awakens, and then in between that and the sequels, they put out like Solo and Rogue One, and they had this like Rogue One and Solo were kind of like grouped together as like Star Wars stories. And I actually I really enjoyed both of those films, and I liked them better than the kind of like flagship franchise that was clearly designed to sell like action figures and merch and stuff in the Star Wars tradition. Um, so yeah, when they shifted from features to episodic limited series, I was stoked that they were gonna make one about Andor because like, it seemed kinda off the bat, like, I really loved the world that they made with Rogue One and how small the plot felt. Um, I think that's the thing with Star Wars, like, they go epic. They, like, try to make it feel big, and, the restraint of Rogue One made it feel, like, fresh and really different for the franchise, and so when they announced that there was gonna be a limited series about that character, I was like, "Ooh, this could be very cool." Uh, so yeah, yeah. I wanna say also, like, it seems like they're still in an era of experimentation.
Mhm.
Um, you know, between the acquisition and the release of Revenge of the Sith, there was that long period that was filled with the Clone Wars,
Mm.
um, which I thought like, I haven't watched the whole series. I only got into it actually because of you. I think you showed me an episode that they made about Darth Maul, and I was like, "Whoa, this is really cool." So I watched all the episodes with Darth Maul, and then I watched the last season, and I really liked that. Um, yeah, so like that was kind of like our connective tissue, and then we've got this like period where they're just trying new stuff. And I think, like, whenever they take, like, a big risk or even just, like, a little risk with the franchise, I think that's what I gravitate towards the most. Like, in addition to Andor, I really liked the Visions series, which is basically like Love, Death, and Robots, but Star Wars, where they invite, like, a different animation studio to do, like, a short film in the Star Wars universe, and it's just like an anthology series of completely self-contained shorts that have nothing to do with, like, the main canon. I thought that was so cool. I really enjoyed watching Visions. So those are my initial thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. Uh. Yeah, we're around the same age, so we have a pretty close experience with Star Wars. Um. I'll definitely. I saw that Visions came out, and I like that it's animated, but I didn't like. I was so burnt by Boba Fett and Obi-Wan because for me, I was like, oh my gosh, these are going to be huge. But then the anyway, so I was kind of like burnt on Star Wars and thought that there was like, okay, well, there's not going to be any amazing Star Wars coming out in this current state. But I was wrong, so I might give that a shot and check it out. Um, but yeah, when it comes to the DVD behind the scenes, I've I my first film I ever bought with my own money was um, Revenge of the Sith, and same thing, same experience. The behind the scenes was so rich um and interesting and imaginative. And one thing that Red Letter Media pointed out about the behind the scenes, the difference between the behind the scenes of modern Star Wars and the prequels was that like they're literally filming the creation of the prequels, where in the modern Disney trilogy and shows, they their mindset about the behind the scenes was, oh, this is opportunity for marketing, and so
Mm,
everything was clean and everything was polished, and all the people were like, oh, it was a wonderful experience, and we are all one big family making these films, and so and so's a genius and all that. Where flashback to the prequels behind the scenes, and it was raw and dirty. Like there's literally like scenes of the producers being like, F, F, our pod racers got sucked into a sandstorm and everything's broken. What are we gonna do, George? Like it was so like the hectic like disaster of creating something was in the behind the scenes. I mean, of course there was like people being like, "Oh, this is great," and like praising the film that they're making, but it was so raw and dirty and it's so much more fun to watch because it they didn't they weren't afraid to show the struggles of filmmaking, which I think was uh, something I liked about the prequels behind the scenes, which definitely influenced my career and my life a lot. Uh, but yeah, let's see. Right, the when it comes to the Clone Wars, which I kind of skipped over, and then we can go right into Andor. Sorry, I just gotta check my mic levels real quick. Um, hello, hello. There you go. I watched them kind of sporadically. They weren't really episodic. They would kind of hop from story to story. So, like whenever like a character that I liked came in. Um, I remember introducing you to the Maul episodes, and I was really into those when I was a kid. And I was like, oh really? I was like, awesome, more Darth Maul because he was kind of killed off too soon for how cool of a character he was. But in hindsight, it was kind of like, in my opinion, like the downfall of bringing too many characters back. It was kind of like
mm,
an excuse for the for people to bring back characters that shouldn't be brought back in the Disney Star Wars products. Um, and when watching them, I could still definitely feel the influence of George, who was a producer of that Disney or not that of that animated series, and um, but yeah, I think that they've kind of given all of the like all of the a lot of control over these new stories to Dave Filoni, who definitely has his skill set, but I don't think that character and plot was in those skill set, and I don't know if he transferred to live action very well because a lot of the things in the like Obi-Wan series and the Mandalorian series, the like awkward writing and like inconsistent story stuff and kind of like it's very random, like if it's almost as if every episode the Mandalorian would do what the writers felt like he should do. There wasn't. It didn't feel like there was a plan and a goal and an outcome like with Andor, which has a completely different um, creative team, and I feel like the difference between the creative team in Andor and the shows before it, like Boba Fett uh, and Obi Wan and the Mandalorian. The right the Let me pull up his name because I want to actually give him proper credit. Let's see, Andor. The writer and director of
I'm talking about Tony Gilroy.
yes, Tony Gilroy. You know his name. I should have just asked you. Uh, Thanks, Ron. He's actually a the creator of the Born Identity series, which
Oh, I had no idea.
yeah, and like when you think about the Born Identity series, every film was amazing. Like every film, like I haven't seen them in so long, but like the the world, the characters, and the story and the plot was just so tight all the way through the whole thing, and I never was taken out of the film, those films, and I had the same experience with Andor, where like, and I want to talk about what you mentioned about how they scaled down, and I think that was so important for Star Wars. And I think the mistake of making sequels is thinking like, okay, bigger and better and bigger and better. And then it's like once you get to multiple planet threats, like in The Force Awakens, which in hindsight I don't like as much, seeing like six planets explode, that doesn't really do anything for me. Like we get it. Like it's the difference between exploding one planet and exploding uh six planets is like it's not interesting. It doesn't make me feel more because it's like yes, it's that's terrible, but it feels the same as if you were to just blow up one. Where in Andor, like it was just like the inciting incident was such a small thing. It was such a tiny little incident that started this whole thing that leads to the first films. And um and I love that. I love that the inciting incident is just basically a guy uh you know accidentally killing someone in self-defense and then realizing like, oh shoot, if I let the other guy go, then like I'm gonna die. They're gonna throw me in prison. I'm like, and I love that he's not just a straight up good guy. Like Andor's not like a straight up good guy. He does like he's like such a gray moral person, and the whole point is it's like his journey of becoming a rebel is like he starts very selfish and is just like I just want to survive, and then his arc in this is so smooth and like his influences, like his mom and his dad and every character along the way. Anyway, I'm kind of going all over the show, but I guess I want to ask you like what was your what was your reaction to the inciting incident and how it was written and the subtext, like the whole thing of show don't tell is so strong in this story, and I just want to hear your take on it, Ron.
Yeah. So if I'm remembering correctly, Andor is looking for his sister at the beginning. And I know that he gets into like a tight situation. Luthien shows up and they have to escape together. To be honest, like the first 3 episodes that sort of set up his arc aren't as clear in my memory.
Mm,
Um, like, the thing that stands out the most to me is, like, the set piece where they have to escape, like, Luthien and Andor have to escape that kind of, like, deserted factory,
Okay, for
and
sure. Well, let me just speak to
yeah.
what leads up to that. I want you, since that is sticking out the most in your memory. I'll
Mhm,
definitely I'm gonna hand it over to you. So before that, he's looking for his sister, and then he just gets starts getting harassed by the a company. I love how scaled down. It's not even the empire. It's a company that works for the empire that's also kind of afraid of the empire. Anyway, they're kind of harassing him and saying like, did you park in the direction that you're walking, because it's off limits for people to park there and there's a huge fine. And he's like, well, I have credits, this much like three, I don't remember the number, but like 3,000 credits in my pocket. And he's like, oh, what a coincidence, because that's exactly how much the fine is.
mm.
And so you can tell that these people are lying. There's no fine. They're just like,
They're just
they're
extorting him.
yeah, they're dirty. They're just basically just dirty
Mhm,
cops, right? And so uh they start and this is the whole thing started because they were in the bar when he was talking to his sister, and the waitress is serving him first even though the other people were there first. And so he was just snarky and disrespectful for them, and so it's like everything, it's like a domino effect. Like, so they were like already hated him because they felt like they weren't being respected as much as they should be or whatever. And so they start harassing them, and then it leads to him accidentally killing one of them and then intentionally killing the other person so that the word doesn't get out, because there's just so much, obviously there's so much
yeah,
corruption that like who knows what's going to happen to Andor. And yeah, so from there, those first three episodes are just like him kind of doing his daily routine, coming up with a is it alibi? What's it called? Where
yeah, alibi.
Yeah, alibi with
Yeah,
his friend, which he just walks up and starts telling him like, this is what we're gonna be doing. This is what we did last
mhm,
night. And the guy's like, oh shoot, you've gotten into trouble. And so and it's all subtext. And instead of saying like, okay, I understand the story, he just
mhm.
adds to the alibi and is like, oh yeah, and remember you fell and we got in a scuffle and you scraped your forehead. And he's like, I'm adding to
Yeah,
your alibi. He's like, oh right, yeah, okay. And so um he gets he gets in connection with his I believe that she's like an ex-girlfriend,
yeah,
the
Bix.
the mechanic
Mhm,
character. um and she connects him with uh and so she's a mechanic, and he's like, I have a part that's worth a lot of money that I've ripped out of an imperial ship. Can you get me in contact with your connection? And um and so yeah, just this whole world of him going through his daily life, and the pace of the show is so slow but dense. Like,
mm,
where if you were to compare it to say Obi-Wan or uh what's it called? Or yeah, any other show, there'd be shows of characters just walking in the forest doing nothing, and just
mhm.
walking and walking and kind of like talking to each other, but it's nothing really like deep. Where this, there'll be a shot of Andor just walking through the town, and you see behind him the daily life of this mining town, or this like scavenger town, and just all the employees clocking into work doing their stuff. So yeah, it's a slow pace, but every second is telling you something about this world and about this character and how he reacts with this world. So it's like not a single second is wasted. um and so
One thing
go
ooh,
ahead.
one thing that's kind of I'm thinking about as you're talking that I really liked was how that sense of scale is controlled by perspective. Like, I think one thing that e Mel Brooks made fun of in Spaceballs that just I thought was so funny was in the opening shot
Mm,
where, like, the ship is flying past, and then it just keeps flying past for,
Yeah.
like, 3 minutes or something like that, and it's so, like, overdone and hilarious, but I think that that is it it's like a summary of Star Wars thing, which is, like, you have this sort of godlike perspective of the action, and it's all about, like, seeing the ships flying and these, like, compositions that would be impossible for anyone to actually see if they were there because it would be so chaotic. And I think Andor does that in its physical blocking. Like when they're on I forget what the name of the planet where the heist happens. I think it's like Aldani or something. They're on Aldani and like when the first TIE fighter shows up, you're like, "Oh my god."
Mm.
Like that thing is terrifying because you don't see it. It's like the monster in a horror movie. It like flies past and you're just with the characters the whole time and you're experiencing it the way that they would be experiencing it. So they do that with the ships and the physical action in the series, but I think more importantly, they also do it with the institutions. Like the Empire is scary for the first time.
Mm.
Like at the beginning, at the beginning of every Star Wars movie, there's a credit scroll that basically tells you what's happening and who you should be rooting for. Like it's a classic thing. It's like and then you see the text and it's like here we're just going to front load some exposition for you and we're going to tell you who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And then after that, like you tell that someone is evil because they've got a red lightsaber and they're dressed in black, and they kill people. And then you've got the good guys who have more developed dialogue, but they also kill people. And you don't really understand like what's motivating them. Um, you don't really see the evil of the institution except for, like you mentioned, these shots of people blowing up planets. But it's so big that you don't feel it. I love that Andor gives us a whole character arc about a guy who works for a company that's basically like corporate police for the Empire, like trying to investigate a murder, getting burned, having to cover his tracks, getting bailed out by an influential family member, and then like basically like working in like an office as just like an office grunt for the Empire. Um, and like you just see the bureaucracy behind it all, and you see the infighting. We've got our arc with the counterterrorism intelligence officer who is like fighting with her colleagues for the approval of her boss. Both of these are people who are existing within a fascist government
Mm.
and they're doing terrible things but they don't act like it, you know? They're, like, in the machine, and you kind of, like, are brought into their world a little bit, and you understand, like, why they would be motivated to do that.
Yeah, that's
Um,
I
yeah.
I'm, I just want to hop in there and say for like for the original trilogy Star Wars, the bad guys they play like they for like the Empire, they let you know that this is a terrifying like through action they let you know like this is a terrifying empire that is ruthless and just wants to control everyone like the whole thing of like we just Tarkin walks into the room and says like oh we got rid of the Senate um now regional people will take care of regional governors will take care of the systems and the fear of this battle station will keep them like in line. And so like it doesn't go into detail like Andor does, but it does because the focus of the original trilogy is Darth Vader and Luke and their relationship and also more focus on the force and like the spiritual journey of the hero and the villain. And like towards the end we get a sense of who Darth Vader was as Anakin and the attempt to bring him back to the good side, which he does save the day in the end. But like I think Andor, the whole goal of Andor was like, okay, like we got like a sense of what the Empire is, um, and that they're in control of everything and there's stormtroopers everywhere. But let's show in detail like how the like what's the FBI of the Empire look like, and that's just like whoa, that's something you'd never think of. Or, I mean, obviously, if there's like there's obviously an intelligence organization that that works for this empire, and so it's really cool. And like you said, with the, I forgot his name. I guess it's somewhere here. Let me just drop it down. Where is he? Where is he? Where is
You're talking about Luthien?
he? Is that the cop that wants to research Luthien? Is
Oh,
that
I
the is
think
that
that's like Cyril,
Zero?
or let me
Yeah,
just check. Yeah.
yeah, Cyril. I think Major. No, no, no.
Yeah,
It's weird.
Cyril
He's like
Karn.
one of the main characters for me, and it's not even in the cast, like the first page of the cast, or maybe oh, there he is.
Yeah, Cyril Karn.
Yeah. So his story, like, I love that it it shows like for Darth Vader, it's like okay, what he wants is power. Where in this show, and yeah, he just wants power, and but in this show, uh it shows like what the low level people want. And I love the scene where the guy's telling the other person or his boss uh like there's two murders, I'm investigating it. And like the guy's like, did you add customization to your suit? And he's like, yeah. And even just like the show don't tell. I mean, they play lip service to it, but like he stands up very straight, and his suit is ironed, and it's has like starch, and it's like it's tucked in. And then his boss is like slovenly, and his uniform is like faded, and he's all about like, oh, just I'm supposed to report the crime that's happened to the Empire, but downplay it. Let's just say it was an accident. Just make it an accident, because I think the line he says is like, I'm supposed to give a report and about crime in this district, and the goal of that report is brevity. Basically being like if crime happens, minimize it and make it as if it's not a thing. Um, and he was like, "What? Two people are murdered." So that's one thing I like about it, is because like the bad guys do have a sense of morality. Yeah, they want to they kind of they want order, and they have like a heavy foot, but like the fact that he cares that two of his coworkers, he's like two employees were murdered. And it's like, yeah, that it's I love giving the bad guys a actual reason, like giving the audience an actual reason to kind of root for the bad guys, because every scene he's in is like, oh, I don't want him to lose his job. And then when he starts rising up, in when he loses his job and he's getting yelled at by his mom, and it's like, I care about this guy a lot, I want him to do well, but I know like if he does well, then that means the Empire does well. So it's a conflicting feeling for the audience, like as a viewer, to be like, oh my gosh, this is so rich. Um and yeah, so yeah, I think I don't know where I wanted to go with that, but what was you wanted to talk about the thing that really impacted you the most was the introduction of, let's see, what was his name? Uh was it no,
Luthien, the Skarsgård dad,
the what?
the Skarsgård dad,
Dad?
Stellan Skarsgård, I think.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
he's like
yeah.
there's all the Skarsgårds, and I think he's their dad, but I don't actually know.
Yeah, his introduction as like he's kind of like a, covert rebel leader. Oh, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Luthien. Yeah, Luthien. Um. Oh, just a reminder. He's a character in Thor. Like he's like a scientist in Thor, and there's like a
Oh, that's right.
he's
Yeah.
there's like a scene where he's like running around naked in Stonehenge, and I didn't even make the connection that it's the same guy because this actor is such a cool character in this show. Anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I just I really liked the way that he was presented as sort of like a morally gray figure who's
Mm,
just like radically motivated by his ideology. Like he has a couple of like really key interactions. Like he interacts with Mon Mothma, um, who is like visiting him in his guise as an art dealer on Coruscant. And then he also interacts obviously with Andor, and we see the way that he kind of like plays Andor. Um, and he interacts with the leader of the heist. I forget that character's name. Um, and then we also see him interact with Forrest Woodward as Saul Guerrera.
mm,
Uh, and I think each of those conversations is so revealing about his motivation because in that conversation with Saul Guerrera, they basically agree that they're going to sacrifice another um, rebel guerrilla leader
yeah,
in order to gain a strategic advantage. Um, and it's such like a cold move. And there's this buildup where you're like expecting, okay, like we've seen that they're going to double cross this guy. And now, like, we're like expecting a battle. Like you're like, oh, this is just gonna feel huge, and then you don't see it at all.
yeah,
Like the next reference to it is when you go to the like basically like the top CIA guy at the Empire, and he's like, yeah, we wrecked that fleet. It like worked real well, and you're like, oh man, like we're not gonna see any space battles. We're not gonna see any like giant action set pieces. Like we're just gonna know that those people that we heard about are gone.
yeah.
Um, which I thought was like a really, really cool choice. But
Yeah,
to
I
go
think
back to
I love that
yeah,
this I love that the story is like it's about the reaction to these events. It's not
mhm,
about seeing the events.
yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Well, with the one exception of the heist, which
Yeah,
I thought
which wasn't a
and the
huge. It wasn't a space battle. It wasn't like a planet-ending thing. It was like a tiny little intimate out like yeah, tiny little town, uh, a
they
rural
were
town.
basically just stealing money from the Empire.
Yeah, it was. They're just stealing money. It was just a heist. It is so
Mhm.
small, and I mean, it was a big thing. It was. It's a. The whole thing that I love about this is like this small action is going to lead to something huge, right? And that's what I love about this show is like these tiny little things. And I want to go back and talk a little bit more about the reason why they're going to sacrifice, and that it's the Rebel Alliance, and that's the thing that you've like in the main trilogy of films you hear them say the Rebel Alliance, and all the spaceships in the Rebel Alliance look very different. And then there's Admiral Akbar, which is like a race of fish people, and you're like, whoa, like these people are really different and diverse. And then in this show, it shows the alliance before they aligned. They don't agree with each other 100% in when it comes to tactics and what to actually do. And so the
Yeah.
Saul Guerrera faction looks so different from there's like there's like the Saul Guerrero faction, and then there's like the guy that travels between factions, which is what's his name? Luthien. Luthien kind of
Luthien.
travels
Yeah.
between faction and has two lives of like a rebel fighter and like a rich antique seller. And just the scene where he's in his spaceship and he's flying to the the planet where he opens the drawer and he puts the wig on and he puts the rings on, and then there's like a
Mhm.
far away shot of him, a full body shot of him, and he changes his posture, and he and just like stands in a different way. and then he like slumps back into his own personality and goes back to to his cockpit. So it's like him embodying a different
Yeah.
personality
That was
because,
such a cool scene.
dude, and then to go back to like why they are sacrificing a whole entire faction of the rebels is because if they warn them, then it will show that they have a spy in the let's just call it the FBI of the Empire. Do you remember the acronym for it? It was like the AL something.
I don't.
Anyway,
But
but
yeah.
and so it's like it's basically like all the this like hundreds, I don't know, let's just say hundreds of people are going to die just so that we can have this one plant that doesn't even want to be there anymore. Like just for
Mhm.
this one guy, his intelligence is everything for the rebel alliance at this point. And so it's like and it's just like the brutality of war of like, oh my gosh, like and the thing is it's like that's true. Like that happened in World War II when they figured out how to decode um the Germans.
Enigma?
What's that?
Enigma?
Yeah, exactly, that movie where the person realizes like, oh, there's going to be a battle, but if we prevent this battle from happening, then and it's going to be an outright slaughter. Like if we warn them, and so I think that's what it's that it just shows that the writers of the show did deep research of what is war actually like, what happens,
Yeah.
and like the gray morality of war. Um, but yeah, that was really amazing.
We haven't even really talked about Mon Mothma yet. I
Dude,
thought her arc was so good.
is one of the best arcs of this film, and she was just a lady, a leader in the original trilogy, who walks in and says like, oh, the Bothans have died, and she was beautiful and elegant. And that was another thing that I just want to say one thing about this faction of the rebellions is I love that you see the people in the heist and they're dirty and they're intense and and not intense, but like literally inside tense. Like
No, they are intense.
they are in they're both. They're intense and they're intense. But anyway, and so it's just like it shows like the good guys are not all one demographic of society. You know, it's not
Mhm.
only the underdogs trying to win. It's also uh like the upper class senator rich people, and they are going through hell too. She can't move her money around and she's trying to figure it out and she's having to do things that she really doesn't want to do, and it just shows that like the good guys are everywhere. Like all types of people are the good guys.
They
Anyway.
achieved so much with the writing for her character too, because, like, I think, like, the fact that she's, like, going through all the mind games of, like, knowing that she's being surveilled and trying to find discreet ways of channeling her resources into the rebellion while also being, like, constantly watched.
Mm,
Like, that's pretty compelling by itself, but then you understand that, like, she's in a loveless marriage.
mm,
She has a strained relationship with her daughter who is sort of reverting to the religious fundamentalism that she has left behind.
mhm.
Um, and you understand that, like, she can't even trust her family members, and that makes her political situation so much more intense, and you can see, like, her whole, like, crux in the 1st season is around, like, whether she's going to allow her daughter to spend time with the son of this, like, corrupt banker,
Yeah.
from her planet, and, like, it's not even, like, an option at first, and
And
then, like, as she becomes more desperate, you're like, "Oh, man, this is happening."
and the fact that like the cool thing of being like, no, no, the daughter, the young teenager, is more traditional than the mother. Where normally
Hmm.
the stereotype would be like the mom is like, "Oh, be this way, do this thing," and she's stuck in like tradition. Where the daughter is more traditional than the mom, and it's just like that happens. That happens all the time. Like it's
Yeah.
it's a stereotype that has been broken, and it's like it's not. Yeah, it's yeah. Anyway,
And
so
it's not a dynamic that I'm used to seeing in television or film.
yeah, but I
Like,
see it every day. I see it
yeah, in
every
real
day.
life, for
Yeah, in real
sure.
life.
Yeah.
Um, it's so interesting because people do rebel against their rebellious parents, and they rebel towards the direction of tradition, which is really bizarre. Um, and I hope for the sequel, when they delve more into that, I hope that it's not just like this tradition's evil and bad. I hope that it's morally gray too. I hope that there's good aspects and bad aspects of it, because I think that would be really interesting. Um, but there's something about that whole situation. Oh, one thing, I was watching a film reviewer talking about the show, and there's this, the show Don't Tell is so strong in this show that um that a scene would happen and I didn't pick up what it meant until I saw this film reviewer talk about what it meant, and I was like, oh, "That's what that show was about." I thought that was a that's what that scene was about. I thought that was a character development scene, not a plot scene, but it was both. And the scene I'm referring to is at some point she realized, like, okay, there's a discrepancy with my finances, and there's a huge chunk of money that's missing, right? And
Mm.
it's hinted that the driver is a spy, and so she, at the end of the story, she picks up her husband and is like, and says to the driver, "Please give us some privacy." And so that's basically saying, telling the spy, like, listen, and because she's pretending like she doesn't know, and then she says, like, "I can't believe you're gambling, like, it's so embarrassing that you're gambling on Coruscant." And he's like, "I'm not gambling." He's like, "Why'd you go to the gambling planet? Why do you have to do it in our city? It's so embarrassing and it's disgraceful." And he's like, "What are you talking about? I'm not gambling." He's like, "I know you are. I know you are. I've seen the finances." And I didn't realize it. She's making up for the discrepancy of the finances that she's been giving to the government, to the rebellion, by uh, by throwing her husband under the bus and saying that
Yeah.
he's been gambling the money away. I didn't even realize that. I thought she was actually just angry that he was gambling. And
Oh,
I'm like,
so
"Oh
good.
my gosh, what?" This show is so good that you realize things about it after you watch the show. You're like, "Oh," because they could have spelled that out to me. They could have looked at the camera and said, "You see, he hasn't been gambling." And
Mhm.
anyway, what did you think of that scene?
So it didn't even make an impression on me, and now you're bringing it up, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah." Like, I think, like, I remember watching it and thinking like, "Oh, man, their relationship is not good."
Right?
Which it, like, works for that purpose,
Mm-hmm.
like, even if you're not, like, a smarty who's, like, tracking exactly, like, what Mon Mothma's motivations are and what game she's playing, like, just, like, having the face level interaction between them being so negative, it just sort of reinforces, like, how unhealthy their relationship is.
Mm.
But yeah, like, that additional subtext really enriches it. Um, I think unrelated to the writing, I just thought the set design and
Mm.
costume design
Coruscant
for
has never looked more cool. I'm sorry for interrupting.
it's so cool. Yeah, yeah, like, it just it was absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, that's that's all I had to say.
Yeah, dude, like, her story is tragic. Like, she has, and I love that she's like, "I'm just pretending to be a rich little senator protesting in the Senate about imperial overreach." But
Mm,
behind that life, like, her like her situation is so dangerous because her persona, her outward persona is I am against the government and I'm going to try to convince people to vote against it. But her inward persona, her reality, the truth is I'm taking you MFers down. Like I am funding people to attack you from all angles. And so she just has to pretend that she's just like, "Oh, I'm not like I'm just a rich girl and I don't agree with you, so I'm going to," but really she's like the leader of
Yeah,
the rebellion and it's like, "Oh, it's so good."
the guise
Um
of being like a kind of like an impotent, wealthy, you know, like do-gooder
mhm.
when in fact you are like financing a guerrilla war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane, dude. Like
What did you think about the mid-season reveal that the leader of the heist was related to Mon Mothma?
that was good. That was excellent. That was so good. And her name was Val. Yeah, and because when you first see
Vel.
her, you
Yeah.
think she kind of, and I think this is a good choice. She kind of looked like the people who were native to that planet and that specific area, you know? Because she's like she
Wearing their
wears like
clothes.
the clothes are dirty and like she has like she kind of looks like she's a native. She doesn't look. She looks like she lives there. I don't know if she did. If they say that she didn't. So when you see her with her hair done beautifully and she's in a beautiful flowing gown and she's nice and clean, you're like, oh my gosh, oh, that's who she is. So it's like, yeah, I love that reveal. Um,
Mhm.
and like one character at some point was like, well, I didn't grow up rich, and you're like, what? This lady's rich, and then you see her, and you're like, oh, and it's like the thing that I like about it is like it shows that financial status doesn't like yes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, but people that are wealthy can have moral intentions in life. They can be like good people, and it's just a good example of that. I like that it's not just black and white. Um,
Mhm.
anyway, and then also the thing that I love about this show is just if you stand. Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to hear about your thoughts about like what was your thought about that reveal?
Oh, I liked it. I remember being like, "Whoa." Um, yeah, and it made sense too because, like, I think that, like, any show is enriched by having networks of relationships between the main characters,
Mm,
and at that point, um we've seen how Vel relates to Andor, we've seen how she relates to Luthien,
mm,
we've seen how she relates to, I believe the character's name is Cinta, who's like it's implied, I think, that Cinta and, Vel are, like, romantically involved as well as being, like, comrades in arms.
mhm,
Um, and then, you know, like, aside from that, like, she's kind of, like, contained within the world of this heist. But then when you learn that she also has, like, a really close relationship with Mon Mothma, then you start thinking, like, you start, like, observing the differences in the ways that Luthien interacts with Mon Mothma and with Vel, and it becomes higher stakes because Luthien's kind of playing Vel as well, you know? She's just, like, one leader, you know, up there with, like, Saw Gerrera and the other, you know, faction that gets annihilated, and none of them are more or less, um, you know, like, valuable. It's all kind of, like, circumstantially driven, which I thought was really cool. And then, yeah, I think through that action, they set up that Vel and Centaur are now gonna have to go assassinate Andor. Um
yeah, that was the most interesting thing. I wanted to actually talk about something that a little bit of a meta outside of the whole
hmm,
story, which there's there's a little bit of controversy with the leaders of the Star Wars universe, the people that that yeah, the people that are in charge, specifically Kathleen Kennedy. There's a picture of her with like her close producer team, and they're all wearing short shirts that say "The Force is female," and like she talked about uh like over the years, Star Wars has appealed to mainly boys, and that's a problem. We need to change that. And like my take on that is like that's not necessarily a problem because this is a story about Star Wars is about war. So like there's definitely I've met tons of my mom's a huge fan of Star Wars. Like there's so many female fans of Star Wars, but it makes sense that it might lean a little bit towards uh boys liking it. And so in every single show since like The Force Awakens, there's been like a mandate of like there needs to be a strong female lead. And I have gotten so sick with how the directors interpreted that, where they're like, okay, well, okay, Ray is going to be our main person, and she's going to be strong, and they're so dumb. Like the translation to strong female lead means one thing to them. It's like, okay, um, they are like they're extremely competent, they never fail, and everybody loves them. And it's like this is not what that means. And I feel like the creators of this show, when they heard like that mandate of your show has to have strong female leads, what the writer of this show they interpreted that as, oh, what a diverse, what an open mandate. That means there can be a strong senator leader, there can be a strong mother, there can be a strong like really detailed, there's like a ex-girlfriend mechanic character who
Yeah,
still
Bix.
cares enough about her ex that she's willing to put her life on the line. There's there's uh there's like guerrilla warf there's careerists, there's women that are bad guys who are obsessed with their career and rising up in the ranks. There's so it's like, yeah, strong female leads does not mean one thing. It could mean so many things. I don't
Mhm.
remember if there's a specific daughter character. There's sisters, the relationship between Mon Mothma and was
Well,
Val. Like I because like I've been it's the same pattern over and over again in every movie. The female character comes in and like every character is like, "Oh, you're the best. We love you. You're the greatest." And then like boom, she can use the force without training and all this stuff. Where this show is like the
here's some
female
real
characters are
people.
so good. Anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I have a couple thoughts about that. I think one, for a film like The Force Awakens and like a series like Andor, it's helpful to like keep in mind who the target audience is. Like The Force Awakens is designed to like sell action figures and appeal to 8-year-olds. And I think like when you think of like the male counterparts in, the prequel trilogy, like Anakin and Obi-Wan, as portrayed in those films, are not particularly complicated. Like, Anakin is good because he's the chosen one, not because he's been on, like, a journey, he's kinda OP from the start.
No, he's
So I
not.
think
I totally disagree with that. His
well, your disagreement is valid, but I'd like to finish my
oh
point.
yeah, sorry about that. Go
Um,
ahead.
I think that it's, like, I was less bothered by, like, how OP Rey was, 1, because, like, I thought that, you know, Daisy Ridley played that character in a really fun way. I don't think like, I wasn't captivated by those films, but I was along for the ride. And I do think that like just given how many little girls I've seen, walking around in Ray costumes for Halloween, like I think that that was resonant. Um, Also, like, I wanna point out, like, how brilliant Rey's costume was because it's, like, so easy to make that costume for Halloween. Like, anybody can, put that together, I think, with just some, like, scraps of cloth and some, like, hair ties. Um, so, yeah, I will say that, like, I hear what you're saying, about, like, the idea of, like, prioritizing strength, like as like being, powerful with like the force or like martial arts skills or whatever versus like inner complexity and like being written as a real person with motivations
And
that
flaws,
are
human flaws.
authentic and yeah, and having flaws. Like characters have to have flaws to be relatable and interesting. Um and I thought that Andor really succeeded with all of its characters, giving them real flaws,
Mm.
like relatable motivations, putting them in situations that challenged them. Um yeah. I
I,
think I think there's like on the subject of gender, the classic like test that we've been measuring films by for years now is the Bechdel test, which
mhm.
is like, does this film have like two female characters that talk to each other about something that is not a man? um, and so many movies fail that test. I'm trying to remember, and I don't know if Andor passes that test either. Like, I think that it
It,
does.
it's gotta. There's so many scenes between the sisters talking about the rebellion. But
It's
anyway,
yeah.
I disagree about Anakin a little bit. I do agree that he is OP. He is the chosen one, but um he's more the archetype of the savant, the child savant, which his competency um puts him to the point of like I can take Dooku by myself, right? And what happened to him? He got his hand lopped
Mm,
off, right? So
yeah.
like sometimes child savants think like I'm so good that they don't realize that someone with decades and decades of experience can wipe the floor with them. And so his overconfidence got him into trouble. So yeah, he was very powerful, but um uh I would have loved to seeing Ray with I'm okay with her being a savant. That's totally cool, but I would love an overconfidence scene to kind of yeah, anyway, because it
Yeah.
just ties to human reality. And as for the Bactel test, like I really don't care about it at all. That doesn't like I feel like um I've seen a lot of things like I saw uh thing of documentary about Pixar, and someone was like championing, like, oh yeah, we made a mandate of there has to be 50% women, 50% men in our shows, even if they're just like background characters. But and there's like a big problem with like too many males and stuff like that. But it's like it really depends on what the story is, right? Like if there's a story about war in and it's about soldiers specifically, and the time period is the 40s or something, then it's going to be a bunch of guys on the front line uh like fighting and talking to each other about the war, about like the people they've lost, and strategies and stuff. And yeah, there may be a scene where like they go back and they're being cared for by the um uh, what's it called, the medic tent or whatever, and there's a bunch of female characters doing stuff. But like I feel like yeah, I just feel like it's it's a weird rule um because inherently I feel like females women are more socially bent by and large. There's definitely engineer women and everything, but like by and large, women are more interested in people and social structures, and men are more interested in things and mechanics. So like so
I mean,
conversation, I don't feel like a conversation
I'm
where
not comfortable making generalizations like that.
it's not a generalization, that's scientific. I feel like that's scientific, but it's not 100%, it's by and large. Like
Why
it's
don't why don't we just agree to disagree?
okay,
And
we can
maybe
disagree about that, but like
yeah.
I don't I have no problem uh with a scene of a woman talking about characters and then they mention a male character. I feel like I don't feel like it's sexist or that there needs to be progress or the film is doing something
I don't think
wrong in that regard. And
I don't think
it's
the
I don't feel
Bechdel
like it's a
test
generalization at
I
all.
don't think the Bechdel test is like a prescription. Like your film's not gonna be better automatically if it passes the Bechdel test. And I've seen some movies where it's like, you know, it's almost like there's a scene that's been written in so that it will pass the Bechdel test, but still like the characters are not really like nuanced or
Yeah,
like
they're like flat and
interesting or
lame.
relatable. They're like
Mhm.
they're quite flat. Um I think it's useful as just like a bottom floor kind of like benchmark. Like
Mhm.
you'd think like this is a no-brainer. Like we should, if a story has women in it, like you just expect that some of them will talk to each other at some point and like the focus of that conversation would be something besides a man. And yet, like, so many movies fail it that I think that's why it's become a useful benchmark because you're like, "Oh, like, whoa," like, a lot of film is male-centric.
Yeah.
Um, so anyways, I think,
Yeah.
like, back to
I mean,
Andor.
I don't really mind about that. Like, I really don't like. I wouldn't say talking about a man means it's a male centric film. Like, I feel like over um like the my feeling about gender is like men and women have been fighting together to make sure that their family and more broadly their tribe stays alive and they keep the tyrant at bay and that the children are fed and yeah like that's like I feel like modern comfort has kind of separated the like gender argument where like there's like a oppressor and an oppressed and everything where like I feel like before modern everything everybody was just trying to survive in any way that they could and they did that the most competently together um collaborating and so when I hear it's like there has to be a test where like a conversation has to happen like imagine the opposite like oh there has to be conversation if there's a test saying like there has to be a conversation about two men talking to each other and they have to be talking about men like like I wouldn't care about that test I wouldn't care about that scene I wouldn't think it would make it better or worse it's just neutral for me but anyway we can talk more about the show if you want
Speaking of collaboration, I would like to talk about the Prison Break arc because we haven't
yes
talked about that yet.
yeah that's like the
Um,
where are we on time yeah we're running out of time we haven't even talked about the prison
oh my gosh, how cool was that whole concept? Like, from a narrative perspective, the idea of, like, this being a humane prison,
mm,
and, like, I just loved how often we heard that, like, "This is humane, humane, humane," and it's
mm.
like, you don't need to wear shackles because the floor will kill you
Yeah
if you step out of line.
yeah
Like,
the level up of like the floor will shock you it's like okay so it stops them from trying to break out and then that's what they tell them in the intro and then you just see someone just had enough with this life and steps on the floor and it just kills them and you're like oh it's not just a like oh zap you and stop you we're gonna kill you
yeah,
oh my gosh and
dude, just
the sorry go
the
ahead you're the
the
most excited about this so I'll let you go
the fact that they, like, all have to, be barefoot, the clothes that they wear, like, the fact that they're building these, like, parts for machinery, like, it had such interesting things to say about prison labor, like, the blocking of, like, their cells, like, the place that they sleep, um, the food that they eat, and how, like, if they, you know, outcompete, like, the other cell blocks, they get, like, a little bit of flavor in their food, like,
yeah
as a motivator.
I think
Um,
yeah
yeah.
the analogy for like the process is this is what powerful people have done forever and the prison as an analogy to demonstrate it is so like power just for the sake of power not like like instead of having the people, the population, instead of them coming together to uh, prevent the people that are what's it called? Putting tyranny of It's not terrorizing. What is it?
Tyrants.
What's it?
Tyrants.
Yeah, tyrants.
Tyrants.
Right. Trying to defeat the tyrants. What the tyrants do instead is they get the people to fight each other artificially, right?
Mhm.
So like in my opinion, in today's culture, they're like the people have been separated in so many it's like in so many ways, right? Like they want people to fight each other across racial lines, they want people to fight each other across like gender and class and all this stuff where well we're all fighting each other, you know, uh we're being tyrannized. Like things are like laws are being passed that takes away our rights as human beings. And I love that because like all of the prisoners, they aren't even talking about the guards. They're just talking about each other. They're like, hey, like you like talk about it, like just start working. And they're they're productive. And the fighting they're fighting each other over like I don't want to get zapped tonight and I want to have flavor in my food. And then one person's like the leader of a whole team of people and is like I'm gonna like my sentence is almost up so you guys better not f this up for me. And they're so angry at each other. And I I just love that. And I love that like the conflict that is happening outside of the prison is forcing them uh to like make them stay longer. And so it's making their
Yeah.
sentences longer, which is ruining their their whole control of them, right? Is like and
Andy
then
Serkis too was such like a radiant like character. Like
mhm,
he did such a fantastic job. And I thought like positioning him as a foil for Diego Luna's character was really interesting too. Cause like the way that Andor gets in that prison is such like a narrative gut punch, you know? He's kind of been this like reluctant participant in a rebel operation.
yeah.
Um, and then he, you know, makes it out and he gets the money and then he's like, "I'm not sure about this empire thing, but I can do my own thing." And then he's just in the wrong place in the wrong time and he gets 8 years in this prison camp.
Mm,
And he's like, "8 years, my god, like how am I going to survive this?" And then Andy Serkis is like on the other end and he's like almost done, just got to like keep your head down
right.
until it's revealed that nobody's getting out.
Yeah.
They're just being cycled because, like, the point is not to rehabilitate people. The point is to turn them into, like, slave labor.
Yeah, and I think that maybe the initial intention of the prison was to actually let them out because like you want to reward good behavior, but I think that the conflict that's been happening on the outside and the empire doesn't have enough resources. So they're like, "Oh shoot, we actually like no, let's keep them these people are productive workers. Let's not let them out. We need more stuff from them." And we need more labor from them. So
Hmm.
and also I heard some people talking about the when he got caught and when he got thrown in prison for no reason, people were complaining about like, oh, he was thrown in prison like the person that caught him just saw him sweating and just said, "You've been running." And then he's like, "It's hot out." And the thing is, that stormtrooper didn't even see him running. He was behind a wall. So he just walks, he kind of jogs a little bit and then kind of walks around a wall. And a stormtrooper's like, "What are you doing?" And it kind of seemed like out of nowhere that he got picked out of kind of at
Hmm.
random. And so they're complaining about how it wasn't really good. But my take on it is I feel like the individual stormtroopers probably have like a mandate. You have to arrest, you have like a quota, like you have to
Yeah.
arrest 10 people a month or else you get a pay cut, right? And maybe
Mhm.
it's towards the end of the month and the person's like, ah, shoot, I have one more. And then Andor walks around, he's kind of sweating, and he's like, ah, what the heck, this guy. And
Mhm.
I think that
Mhm.
they're also subtext of them profiling, because what do they need? They had this old guy in the prison who's basically dying. They need strong people, able-bodied people in these prisons, right?
Mm.
So I think he just looked at him and he's like, oh, he's like 30, he looks fit, he looks kind of stressed out. I'm gonna just throw him in the machine, and then my
Mm.
quota's met. The thing is like what I just did there is a little bit of writing for them. I feel like this stuff is not really shown in the subtext of it. So maybe they could have gone into detail of like the individual stormtrooper, like looking at his like I don't know, his phone in the Star Wars universe saying like you're one short of your mandate and you're gonna get a pay cut tomorrow, and he's like, ah, what the heck, and just turns around and grabs Andor. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I like the idea that the rebellion fighting back is just pushing the tyranny really high, and um yeah, so the whole prison arc is amazing. And the whole thing about this is about the show is when we landed on the heist planet when they were doing the heist, my impression was like, this is the show and I'm here for it, right? Like, this is the show, this is the main cast of characters. Obviously, they are, because the writers are spending so much time developing all of these characters. Like, Karis, the kind of libertarian rebel that was talking about freedom a lot and had his diary and
Mm.
his like compass that is like off the grid. You know that character?
Yeah.
He gets crushed. Like when I was watching that character, like I was like, this is one of the main characters. This guy is so interesting. He's like the moral
Mhm.
backbone of this group, and then he just accidentally gets killed, and
Yeah.
it's like he's a part of the.
So devastating.
He's okay. There's two pieces of Andor's arc. One is his his there's three pieces. We haven't even talked about his mom yet. There's three pieces. His mom raised him to be a rebel, but he kind of didn't really want to, right? And his dad taught him to be resourceful and keep an eye out because you can find profit anywhere when he was talking about machines. And then he meets this guy who's like the moral backbone, which is making him question his own life philosophy. And then he still resorts back to his instinct of like, I'm just gonna go to this resort planet. I'm gonna get like a nice hotel. I'm gonna get a lady, and I'm just gonna chill at the beach. And then he just gets thrown in prison for no reason. And he's like,
Mhm.
all right, I'm done. I'm sacrificed. And like that, it makes his sacrifice in what's it called? In what's the name of the movie?
Rogue
In
One.
Rogue One, like he
Mhm.
sacrifices his life, and you 100% believe it. Like I watched the
Yeah.
movie after I watched the show, and I was like, yeah, like this guy, of course he would sacrifice his
There's
life without
continuity there.
questioning. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, man, that coffee that I've been drinking is catching up with me. I need
Oh,
to
for
use the
sure.
restroom.
All right.
We good if I just, dip out for a second?
Yeah, for sure.
Alright, I'll be right back.
Yeah. So I, what else about this show? There's so many. I wish I should have done. I should have planned to have more time because the show is so good. There's so much to talk about, so many scenes that we haven't even touched upon. Uh, yeah. I should have thought of something to talk about if there was some dead time. But yeah, I like this. I like this character, the one that got squashed. I want to say something, but I don't want to like not say it with Ron here. I guess I'll just go to the be right back screen. All right, so Ron's back, and we're gonna do. You got about 5 minutes left. You can spend on this podcast. So I guess I'll let you just recap your feelings on the rest of the prison scene arc and the show in general at that time, and then I'll probably uh, just close it on my own after that.
Want to say that I thought like it was so devastating that Andy Serkis couldn't swim at the
Oh
end.
God.
Gosh, oh, it really just tore at my heartstrings. Although I have seen that Andy Serkis has been cast again in season 2.
Oh,
Um,
thank God.
yeah, so that makes me really hopeful. I hope it's not just flashbacks.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
because he would
I
make a
I
strong rebel leader if he.
yeah, man, he was so compelling. I mean, I think he's compelling in everything that I see him in. Um, but wow, like what a great little role for him. Um, yeah, to wrap it up, I just loved the show, and I don't know how many seasons Disney is renewing projects for, but I was looking it up, and I know that you'd said that like it wasn't super watched, but I think that was just at the beginning of its run. Like
Oh,
everything
that's good
that
to hear.
I'm reading that's later is saying it's like from the data available, it seems like one of the most watched programs on Disney Plus's top 10. Like I think it had cracked the top 10 on Disney Plus last year. I mean, it also got like 8 Emmy nominations.
Oh,
So
I heard it did get critical acclaim. I hope that
yeah,
pushes it to give these people more
yeah.
shows and stuff.
Production is obviously on pause because SAG-AFTRA is still on strike. And I think they stopped production in April or May or whenever the writer's strike started. But yeah, I hope the AMPTP, and SAG can come to an agreement that benefits everybody. Um, and I am excited for when season 2 drops.
Yeah, I don't really want ChatGPT to write season two,
No,
but
I don't think it would be better if
it
ChatGPT
would be better than
wrote
Obi
it.
Wan, but it wouldn't be
Ooh,
as
hot
good
take,
as
hot take.
Andor. Hot take. Um,
Yeah, rewrite Obi-Wan in the style of Andor.
yes, dude,
ChatGPT.
please, please, just yes, give Obi Wan a season two and just retcon the previous season. Um, I just want to tell you one thing before you go, because I don't think you. I don't. I don't. I don't think. You might not know. Do you know what the prisoners are building?
I'm assuming they're building the Death Star.
Yep, they're building the laser of the Death Star that eventually kills Andor. He's building the weapon that kills him.
Whoa.
There's an after credit scene of the pieces being installed into the Death Star. Check it out. Just YouTube it.
That is some meta stuff.
It's so cool. Yeah. I mean, it could have been anything, but it makes sense because they're trying to build the weapon to stop these rebellious events from happening.
Yeah.
They're trying to
Oh,
deter rebellion with the Death Star, and yeah,
very cool.
yeah. Anyway,
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I love chatting with you about this very, very cool chapter in Star Wars.
yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for coming, Ron. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for
All right.
sharing your thoughts. All right,
Of
have a good
course.
one, man.
Anytime. You too. Talk to you later.
Cool. Bye. All right. So that's it for Ron, and now it's just me. I just wanted to give my follow up. Yeah, Ron's an old friend. I've known him my entire life. His name's not actually Ron. Uh, I'm going under a pseudonym. So I asked him to. Um, we have different we have different opinions about life. Obviously, we talked about that, but we're still close friends. And but yeah, I just like talking to him because he has a contrasting opinion than I have, and I think that that's important. That like even if you don't agree with someone, doesn't mean you can't have a really good conversation. And yeah, I wish we got to go through um, the whole show in depth, but I just don't didn't have the time today for it. Um, I only have a couple minutes left myself, so um, but yeah, this show is really good, and I'm really happy that I didn't know that it's getting more views, so I'm really happy that it's getting lots of views. Because I think it's well deserved, and um, yeah, just the show in general is so good. And what part did we not get to talk about? Let's see, the prison scene. The prison arc was really good. The mom character shown in the flashbacks was really good. And I like it's weird that the show gives more respect or is better at giving respect to older characters than the original trilogy. Like Princess Leia should have gotten the arc of the mother character in this show. What's her name? I need to call it out because let's see. Marva. Marva Andor. She should have like her character, the end of her arc is she dies of old age. She got an injury, which apparently she was like doing trying to sabotage something and she hurt herself, and she was just in a room that had no heating and she just died of old age. But the days before she died, she knew it was coming and just gave this call to action to the rebellion. And she died of old age, and that's not like a fantastic like uh self-sacrificial. Actually, it was a little bit self-sacrificial because apparently the she wasn't taking aid from the people that were visiting her. So I think she was just letting herself go, because she knew that it would bring uh Andor back. And the fact that the rebellion, let's see, what's his name? I can't find her. Oh, there it is. Luthien. His intention was to kill Andor because like he leads him uh back to him, and he needs to just cut off that path to the rebellion. And during his mission to kill him, he saw the speech that Mava gives, and I think he's like, "Whoa, wow, this." I think it like kind of reoriented him, and in the end, he chooses not to kill Andor, and Andor, fully committed to the rebellion at this point, is just like you can kill me or let me join you, like those are your two choices. And so it kind of leads into a great season two. And the fact that they actually did a damsel in distress arc in this show was so shocking, and I did not expect them to do this because normally all the female characters save themselves from the situation that they're in. But it was so much deeper because Bix uh, put herself on the line and risked her life to help Andor, and that put her in a situation to have to be tortured. And that was another thing too, just the evil way the Empire uh, decided to torture their victims is so cruel, with like the death cries of infant alien species. It was so awful. Um, and Yeah. Anyway, we're at the cutoff now. I'm gonna have to end this live stream right here, and I'm really thankful for Ron Solo for joining me. He is a relative of Han Solo, apparently. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Have a good one, everybody. I'm kind of worried about the audio levels of this one. Please like and subscribe, and have a good one.